Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about 5 autumnal books that I would recommend to you. I wanted to start a little series where I would go through 5 seasonally appropriate books, mainly because I know that is something that is kind of lacking on my channel, because I personally am not very much of a seasonal reader, aside from maybe reading a couple more spooky books around Halloween, and I do read quite a few Christmassy books at Christmas, but I do just tend to read whatever, regardless of what time of year it is. But I know that a lot of people do like to read seasonally and like to read with themes in mind. And it's something that, as I have now got my TBR right down, that I'm starting to think of more and more, because previously my TBR had been dictated by books that I'd bought way back when. That maybe the reason I don't read seasonally is because I'd felt pressure to read old books rather than buying new things or getting new things out of the library that are more seasonally influenced. But anyway, without too much rambling, I do really love autumn. I think it is my favourite time of year. And when I think of autumn and reading, I think of back to school, I think of dark academia. Generally, environments that I would consider to be autumnal would be schools and universities, libraries, as well as there being like a bit of a Halloweeny twist. I'm not somebody who's into horror, but like a little bit of spookiness is okay for me. I don't like being scared. So the 5 books that I am recommending are a combination of classics and contemporary that all have those kind of vibes. So the first book that I want to recommend today is Once Upon a Tome by Darkshire. This is the only non-fiction book on this list, and it's a memoir of the author's experience working as an antiquarian bookseller at Sotheron's bookshop in London. So this definitely has kind of like non-fiction, real life dark academia vibes, seeing somebody working with antiquarian books. Whenever I think about this book, I envision like lots of browns, lots of tweed, lots of very old looking books with leather bound covers. But I think what kind of cuts through that imagery is the fact that Darkshire is just very, very funny. He has a very dry sense of humour. And as much as I do like a bit of dark academia, I also like a bit of humour. When I think about university, I don't tend to think of like intensely studying in a library. I tend to think of all of the fun things that I got up to. And I feel like this book really echoes that feeling. An academically leaning book that is a little bit sadder in tone is A Terrible Kindness by Jo Browning-Wroe. In fact, I'm going to be rereading this book this month for my In Real Life book club. This book kind of has 2 timelines, but we're following the character of William Lavery, who works as an embalmer. And in the later timeline, in the 1960s, he is called to work at the Aberfan disaster, taking care of the bodies of the children who were killed in that disaster, getting to know the townspeople and trying to find ways to help them with their grief. And this event really prompts William to think about his own past when he was a child studying at Cambridge to be a boy chorister. So with this, not only do we have the school setting, images of Cambridge, of cobbled streets, you've also got like classical music, and also this prominent theme of death. William has to work through these memories, come to terms with them, and also come to terms with his relationships to his mother and how it was really strained during his childhood. For a book that is definitely on the spooky side, I'm going to recommend Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a book that I read last year when I read 3 books that were all to do with vampires. The link to that review down below. But I was surprised at how much I ended up enjoying Bram Stoker. You know, I do know obviously the classic like iconography of Dracula. I've seen him referenced many times, but I hadn't until last year actually read the book. And I was shocked at how many surprises were actually in store for me, despite the fact that I would vaguely know the plot, or at least I knew the characters. And what I wasn't prepared for was just how like chilling the atmosphere was. I made the mistake of reading this before I went to bed, and so spent most of the night like terrified that Dracula was going to come through my window. And I feel like for a story and a character that so many of us know, actually being able to elicit some sort of surprise out of me is noteworthy. I think it shows a lot about this writer and how Bram Stoker is able to evoke that sense of atmosphere and doom and fear. This will also work very well for Victober. I know it's a bit of a hit and miss book for some people, but I really enjoyed it. Another Victober book, really trying to stay on theme this month, is Jane Eyre, which I actually recently reread, because of course for an autumnal themed reading recommendations, I would have to talk about the Brontes, and this is my favourite Bronte book so far out of the ones that I've read. The classic story of young Jane Eyre going from her childhood, going from being abused by her aunt and cousins, being sent off to Lowood School, graduating from there, and then becoming a governess at Thornfield Hall, tutoring the ward of the mysterious Mr. Rochester. I feel like the autumnal vibes are all over this book. Not only are we talking about studying and reading and learning, but of course the Bronte atmosphere, I think, lends itself very well to the autumn seasons. Everything kind of feels slightly eerie, slightly desolate. I do maintain that I feel like Jane Eyre is not quite as gothic and creepy as a lot of people tend to push upon it, as a lot of pop culture adaptations of it try to make it feel. I feel like it's a very grounded novel, but there are are like elements of the mysterious. Hearing crying or laughing or screaming late at night that you don't know where it's coming from. Mysterious fires breaking out in bedrooms. I think it's a fantastic book and definitely one that everybody should read. And then the final book that I'm going to recommend to you is historical fiction, and it is a recent read for me. It's Learned by Heart by Emma Donoghue. Emma Donoghue's latest offering, which follows the character of Eliza Rain, who is attending the Manor School in York, a boarding school for girls, which is very strict, very meticulously maintained. And one day a new student arrives, and that student is Anne Lister. And Anne Lister, with her very headstrong, forthright attitude, her slightly more masculine way of wanting to dress herself, her superior education really turns things on their heads at this school. Not only that, but as Eliza and Anne are paired together to sleep in the same room, they develop a real closeness, which does, over the course of the book, develop into something more. I was always going to love this book because it is about Anne Lister, who you'll know from me saying many, many times on my channel is a historic resident of my hometown of Halifax. But I've never read anything that is really focused on her early life and her school days and her first love, Eliza. So this was really lovely to read, and I love the way that Emma Donoghue brought this world to life. Once again, we've got this school atmosphere, and as historical fiction that is based on real people, somebody that I already knew the life of, I was constantly on edge throughout this book, knowing that this is inevitably going to crumble and go wrong. And so for me, that did contribute to a slightly, not eerie feeling, but I did feel unsettled reading it because, you know it's not going to have a happily ever after. But a really fantastic book, and one that I definitely recommend for this time of year. So there we go. Those are my 5 recommendations for this season. I do definitely have quite a few autumnal books that I could have mentioned, so I'll definitely have more to recommend next year. Do let me know if any of your favourite seasonal books for autumn. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.